Hey guys, Dr. Shook here. What I want to talk to you guys about today is I want to talk to you about laboratory ranges, and using those laboratory ranges to help evaluate what's happening with your health. So I want you to consider something. It was eye-opening to me when I learned some of these concepts I'm about to share with you guys. So when I was first getting into doing laboratory testing and blood testing, I learned that the laboratory values, the ranges, so for example, like TSH, thyroid-stimulating hormone, most common marker used to evaluate thyroid hormone function in medicine, in all of medicine. When I first learned this, it blew my mind. The laboratory ranges for the lab high and like the lab low values, right? So you get these lab reports back. There's your number, and then there's a lab high and lab low. The idea is that if you're above or below those markers, there's a problem, right? Well, first of all, I learned that those are different all across the country and the world, those ranges. And I was like, wait a second, do we not know what the ranges are that are healthy? So how can there be a different number? How can someone be hypothyroid at 4.51, like as a top number, right? TSH goes high. That's how they diagnose hypothyroidism. How can they be hypothyroid at 4.51 here in my area, but somewhere else they have to be above 6? I was like, that makes no sense to me. Like that just does not make any sense. So what ends up happening is that a lot of those averages, those laboratory ranges, they're based on an average, a statistical analysis of all the people that have been to the lab that you went to, right? The lab where you had your blood drawn. They average all the people that come into that go to that lab over the past 12 months, and they come up with these statistical analysis, and they come up with these bottom and these low and lab high and lab low ranges, and that's different across the country. There's no standard. Now, not all laboratory markers are that way, but there's quite a few, a lot of them that are that way, and even the ones that do have standards, some standards with that are the same around the country, around the world. Even those may not be ideal, may not represent like ideal chemistry, like what you want. They can represent more of like a disease process, right? A pathological state. So this laboratory testing, when I get labs done with people, we get different values. We see different values all over the country and the world, like I said. So how do you evaluate really, does someone have a problem or not? Because if you're relying on a laboratory range, so then what does it mean? So what we do is we use what we call functional or ideal laboratory ranges, and we also use the disease-based ranges, which are the ones that you get done at your labs, right? So here's how I use them. So when we get the laboratory results back, I look at your markers to see if they're lab high or lab low, right? And if they are, then that's more representative of a more significant problem because you're falling outside of the laboratory range of all the people that have been to that particular lab. And for one thing, the people, got to keep this in mind, people that get their blood work drawn, they're typically not healthy, right? Healthy people don't go, hey, let's go see how healthy I can get today. Let me get my blood drawn. They don't do that. Usually if people aren't having problems, they're not getting their blood drawn, right? Unless they have to go. So you're really being compared to already a sick population of people, right? So if you're already lab high or lab low in comparison to those people, there might be a problem, okay? There's more likely to be a more significant issue. So first of all, we want to know if that's occurring because we want to be able to see what's happening with your body's physiology, obviously. Now, how do you know, though, if someone has results that are more narrow, that aren't above that lab high or that lab low range? How do you know, is that significant or not? I mean, what happens if your thyroid hormone levels are really close to the top of the lab range, but you're like 5 points away from lab high, but that's not over 95% towards the high end? Is that a problem or not? What if you're like only a point or two away from being like lab low, but it's not lab low, so is it a problem or not, right? Is it an issue? When do you start worrying or wanting to consider that a laboratory high or low marker is a problem? Okay, when do you start doing that? And so here's what we do. We take we take consensus statements. So, for example, we use like the American Academy of Clinical Chemists, the Endocrine Society, numerous other groups that come out that are expert panels get together and they say, hey, this, if they publish a consensus statement, they say, hey, this is what we think is ideal physiology, ideal chemistry. What we try to do is we try to take that and incorporate that into our analysis. So we look at two different sets of ranges for every marker. We look at the lab ranges and then we look at these functional or ideal ranges. Now those come from a lot of these groups. They also come from clinical experience and observation of what we think should be ideal chemistry. And we look at, like, is there a pathological range, or are you outside of the ideal or the functional ranges, either high or low? Now, we don't diagnose anything off of those functional ranges, but what it allows us to do is it allows us to compare you to what we think ideal body chemistry should be, instead of just looking at comparing you to sick people. What that allows us to do is pick up patterns in your blood test results that could be suggestive of a shift towards a disease state or towards a problem. So I wanted to share that with you guys because it's really important to kind of question everything, right? You look at your labs, and if you have any labs, pull them out and look at them and say, well, man, you'll probably observe that some of those laboratory values are pretty close to the high or pretty close to the lab low, and you might say, well, I wonder if that's a problem. It's a good question. You should do that. You should look at that, because a lot of things can be detected that can really help you to do some things to optimize your health right now. So, for example, here's a great example. A lot of times I always get red blood cells checked on people that I work with. And the reason we want to get red blood cells checked is because we want to observe to see if there's anemia, which is a decreased ability to carry oxygen. If there's a decreased ability to carry oxygen, it's a problem. It's going to be an issue because you're literally starving yourself of oxygen from the inside. Okay, if you can't get oxygen to the cells of your body, your cells can't function. They can't manufacture. They can't generate energy, and so you can have major dysfunction. It's a big problem. So one of the markers, the lab values that I'll look at is something called the MCV, for mean corpuscular volume, and it means the size of the red blood cell. Okay, so if we see the red blood cell starting to getting above, like the MCV typically above 91, so that's what I typically am looking at as far as size goes. Getting above 91, there's going to be, to me, that's a problem with the red blood cell getting too big. That can be indicative of an issue with being able to utilize or carry B vitamins. Okay, and then if they can't utilize B vitamins properly, the cell gets bigger. Now, most labs are going to tell you that above 94, 95, even higher than that is going to be, the lab range, and when it becomes a problem. That's when it's a major problem, in my opinion. And we can often see that if we see that MCV creeping above 91, that if we start thinking to ourselves, well, okay, maybe there's a B vitamin issue. Maybe they don't have enough B vitamin, but more likely they're not absorbing the B vitamins properly because they have an issue like hypochlorhydria or low stomach acidity, which could be caused because of hypothyroidism or decreased thyroid hormone activity, which can result in hypochlorhydria. Okay, or maybe they have an H. pylori infection that decreases stomach acid output. All these things are potential issues, and if they don't have enough acidity, they won't break down and metabolize their B vitamins properly, and then you can see stuff like the MCV getting bigger. Okay, so that's just a great way to illustrate, a simple point in how these functional ranges can be valuable in helping you to observe changes in chemistry before they become a pathological disease state. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful in understanding laboratory ranges, ideal ranges versus your laboratory range, how they can help us, give us some guidance on what to do, how they're more sensitive to detect shifts or changes in the physiology that maybe we can support nutritionally before they become full-blown disease processes or bigger issues, and just really give you some perspective on this, because I was blown away when I learned that. I was like, wow, how can all these numbers be different across the country? It just really seemed like it didn't make a lot of sense, and it still doesn't. It seems like we would have standards, that would be universal. It seems to make like it would make sense. Just know that there's people getting diagnosed. There are people getting diagnosed with hypothyroidism that may be hypothyroid here, but not hypothyroid in another state or country, and they're being prescribed medications based on this. So what is the standard? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't. I don't know. I think there's a lot of, I could go into more, but it seems like it would be more more universal, but perhaps they're trying to make observations of local populations of people that may be different genetically. You know, maybe there's a different local. They're trying to get more of an observation of a local population by doing it this way, but I don't know. I think there should be standards. It seems like it would make sense to have standards. But anyway, Dr. Strick here. Appreciate you guys. I've rambled on as per usual, but I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you on the next video or live stream.